Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number, if you can believe it, 86. And I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin, and I can both believe it and not believe it at the same time. We've been doing this for 86 episodes. That's absolutely fantastic. And thank you to all of you, whether you are listening for the 86th time or the first time. Thank you for joining us. If you're doing so live, good morning. Enjoy your coffee. Enjoy your day. If you're listening to this as a podcast, thank you so much for subscribing and for leaving us a review. And remember, you can get this wherever you get your podcasts, which is great. You can also get videos of these episodes, I should say, at our YouTube channel, Breaking Up with RBS. Ooh, I'd have to take a deep breath there for a minute, Tawny, before I get to the rest of this. And in addition to that, we have a Facebook group of the same name, Breaking Up with RBS. Tawny also offers a 6-week self-mastery course that you can take and apply all these things that we talk about, the practices that we talk about in your own context. And every second Saturday of the month, Tawny and I do a free Zoom workshop where we do a practice, breathing practices, answer any questions that you might have about this, and get you introduced to some of these things. There's a lot of stuff that we offer, and more on the way. That's a little teaser, but more on the way. How you doing, Tawny?
Well, I am doing well. Feeling good, getting good sleep, doing fun things outside. Feeling well. How about yourself?
Good. Same. Yeah, I've the last couple of weeks I've been in a real good flow overall. With the same things, getting good amount of rest. My diet's good. My exercise is great. I don't think I've ever been as consistent for as long with the exercise that I'm getting, and I feel really good, and I'm not overdoing it. And all the things I'm working on are kind of finding their own pace here and there. And I'm finding that not always making a million lists is helping me in some ways. That's a whole different thing we don't need to get into. But nevertheless, trying to stay with the flow and trusting the stuff that comes up and then acting on it is what I've been doing. So it's been good. Mm-hmm. It's been good. Yeah. And then that takes, in some ways that takes what we were talking a little bit about last week, some listening to myself to be doing, but it's been good. And honestly, the nicer weather lately has been very helpful.
Yeah, moving into spring and looking forward to summer, that always sort of rejuvenates us and gets us sort of like, I got to get ready for summer. I got to start getting my workouts in.
Well, see, I started with this whole thing on January 1st. I think I mentioned on the show before that even though I don't do resolutions, I asked myself the open-ended question, what would it be like if I made my workouts non-negotiable? Like when I scheduled them, I went to them and I worked everything else around them. And that's been going now for however long it's been, since January 1st. And it's been going really well. I feel really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic when we don't let things just, random things just get in the way of ways that we can take care of ourselves. We do feel better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do. So, awesome. All right. So really great stuff last week, the art of listening and listening to others and being heard. So where do you want to go today?
Well, I know that we just touched a little bit on listening to oneself. I think that is, I wonder if there's more there that we can sort of uncover or debunk. I mean, we talk about our BS stories all the time, but I think it can be kind of confusing sometimes. Like, okay, wait a second. I'm listening to myself here, and here I am listening. But who's actually doing the talking? Is that me?
Yeah.
And how do I know?
Yeah. How do I know if this is a BS story or if this is really not a BS story? And listen to myself. Absolutely. I think that might have been something I asked you a ways back when I first started working with you way back when, was how do I know? How do I know when and it seems like a weird question. How do I know if I'm full of BS on something? How do I know when I'm not? All right. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, considering what we're just on that lead in, trusting ourselves,
Yeah.
listening to myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's do
that
it.
listening, awesome. That listening to oneself does lead to trusting oneself, right? Because we've already debunked this idea that we can predict the future and plan for every sort of scenario. And so that we can be in control. We've already debunked that. We know this. We experienced it, all of the things. Most of us have let that go, even though we want to hold on super tight, right? So then the rules have changed, right? If we've really let that go, then what are we left with, right? There's got to be on some level an ability to trust ourselves to deal with whatever life brings in the best way, best in a good enough way, given what we're experiencing in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have to then plan for all the unknowns. Okay, how would I handle that? 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 Right. There's no listening to oneself if we're engaged in that kind of process all the time.
Hmm.
So it would feel like, how can I trust myself if I can't, get all of these plans in? So we've already debunked this. We can't plan for the future like that. Right. We can have some structures in place that can make the future, fall in place in easier ways to some degree. We can kind of do that, but we can't sort of have the plan for every scenario to be able to control our future either.
Yeah.
So here we are back then, um, now having to listen to ourselves in order to build trust. It's kind of a different thing than we've done. We haven't really. It's like we're evolving or something. I don't know. There's something about this, right? 50 years ago, if we would have been talking about some of this stuff, people would have been like, "What are you talking
Yep.
about?" Right?
Yep.
So, that's how we do. We grow like plants, right? It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I know it is. I know. Yeah, and we do. And I think it's what comes up for me right away is that, like we were talking about at the end of last week, the idea of this being a practice, learning to be a better listener, or, from an attuned space, there's practice involved. The experience, I think, of learning, going through the process, the open-ended question of how do I know if this is a BS story or how do I know if it's not? The practice of doing the best you can in those things with what you've got, and recognizing that whether you recognize it in the moment as a BS story or not, you can keep learning from it and keep moving forward and keep growing and keep changing. And it develops over time like any other practice. You start developing a better sense of when you are more attuned with what's actually true for you in a given moment, for yourself in a given moment, and what's BS. That does come up, and it seems to me one of the things that's key here is to recognize that oftentimes, at least for me, that scenario was I wanted to be right the first time. Like I didn't want to be wrong, right? I don't want to do this if it's BS. I don't want to follow this if it's BS. How do I know? Well, sometimes it still was, and I didn't think it was, and other times it was the opposite. But I survived it.
Yes, it's in the noticing, little by little by little, moment by moment, and if we're listening, we can sort of talk to ourselves in ways that we can question or um, have some sense of a feeling around certain things. Does this fit? Does this not fit? Is this a pattern of practice for me? Like every time this kind of thing happens, do I go back to this same story? Like, oh, there's the thing. It always happens this way for me. Like that's a pretty good indicator. If we bring past into present, off that can be a pretty good indicator that we're on the BS story as opposed to really listening to ourselves. Because right now is there's a possibility for right now to be a different experience in this moment rather than
Yeah.
bringing all the past up in to inform you about this moment around, and then it really being about some of those BS stories.
Absolutely. And I know for me sometimes and I think back to that, and still will happen. Like, sometimes not even needing to find the answer. Like, you know what? I'm not sure. So I'm not going to feed anything one way or the other. I'm not going to feed if this is I don't know if this is a story. I don't know if it's not. So I'm not going to feed it, and I'm going to keep moving forward or staying present, whatever it's required. For me, sometimes if I'm in an emotional state and I'm wondering if these stories are popping up, sometimes the best thing for me to do is by not feeding those is just to, as we talked about before, I'm feeling this, this, and this, and I'm going to go make lunch or I'm going to go back to work or I'm going to take care of this thing that I need to take care of. I'm going to go get my car washed like I planned, right? I'm going to go meet my friends as I planned, sometimes that's it. It's for me, at least, sometimes that desire to figure something out in the moment is when I catch myself going, do I need to figure this out or can it just sit here? When I let it sit, oftentimes I either something comes to me where it's either, well, it doesn't even matter in this scenario, doesn't matter. Or, yeah, okay. Now that I let go of the energy around it, yep, that was BS. I don't need to pay attention to it anymore. Or, nope, that was me. And all of a sudden I have a little more information to work with and the experience out of my body in that moment that's going to help me a little bit better the next time. That's what I've experienced, at least.
Yeah, that pull to figure the thing out, right? We've all been conditioned to fix the problem, find the solution, figure it out right now better than any other time. Or, we've got some of us like to figure it out right now and just, go in in the mental space, right? Just like problem solve right then. And then others of us just want space from it, but we're going to ruminate. Right. So we're still doing the same thing, just pacing it out differently. So let's not kid ourselves right.
That's a great
Either
point.
way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's the sneaky part of this, right? Among others, there's plenty of sneaky parts, right? But I mean, that is true. Like we can either figure out, ruminate. It can be, that's why, I mean, getting into the body is so key with all this, because those other things you just described is all the thinking space bouncing around, disconnected from the rest. And, I remember once we talked about this and you'd given me some input on in difficult conversations, breathing, being really intentional in breathing in the conversation to see what would happen. And that taught me a lot about getting out of my head just for my head's sake, that everything had to be figured out there. And I think that's, to me, is again, where the body space, the being grounded in the belly and moving from there, that's a different way of approaching these things and learning to trust oneself. It's easy to say, trust your gut. That gets a little loaded in what we might mean, but that's closer to where a lot of this really gets anchored in a positive sense, isn't it?
Yeah, from a gut space, we're not making problems out of things. So we don't have that covering up from that space. Like the body doesn't make up the problems. It's the thinking space that makes up the problems. Like, this particular thing happened. Oh my gosh, it's a huge problem.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when we get underneath that, then we have a better clue of what really, and this takes practice and all the things. And that's why we do our, second Saturday of the month. But when we can get out from under, when we can get, I can't even speak, when we can get underneath the stories and the thinking space about a lot of different things, right? Then we're experiencing more of ourselves. So we get to start to listen from there. Because the conditioned stories of all the shoulds and how we should be and what they should be and all the things is covering up a lot of ourselves. So we need space from that to even be able to start to see more clearly or to experience more clearly, like what's me and what's the story. So getting in the body allows for more space. And that doesn't mean that we won't discover over time ways of thinking about ourselves that is in alignment with who we are, right? We will be it, but typically, oftentimes, if we're not there, we are quite clouded
Yeah.
by the conditioned stories.
That's a really good descriptor, clouded. That's often like how it feels. Things aren't clear, right? And when we aren't clear, to play that visual out, when we can't see, that brings up a lot of different things, right? It can bring up tension, constriction. I can't see, slow down, right? Maybe more high energy, more panic in the body, or more anxiety, maybe a low level. Yeah, I think you're exactly right about that. And that resonates deeply with me in that learning to trust myself again. So much of it comes back to not just the process of breathing, but that the okayness in the moment, right? The reminder that, yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. This has snuck up on me, or I'm not sure if this is a story or not, but it's okay that I don't know. And I'm okay right now. And it's okay that it's cloudy, perhaps, because it might be all these different things. So instead of pretending this is the reality, the fact is the reality is a bit cloudy right now. That by itself is just a powerful space to open up to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the body knows just everything that you just said, and the body knows when we're out of alignment. When, it's what's wrong? Everything's going fine, but I just don't really, whatever. Or, oh, why am I frustrated and irritated all the time? Like the body's trying to tell us things.
Mm-hmm.
And as we listen more closely, as we pay better attention, as we attune to body space outside of the stories that we're inundated with, and the ways of thinking that are pretty sabotaging of sorts, really.
Yeah.
Then we start to we start to clear things up a little bit, but we're not going to be able to clear it up without getting into the body. I mean, that's your ally. So we want to be able to, we talk about practices and we talk about breathing and we talk about being able to, get out of this headspace piece. Lots of different ways to do it, but the headspace is not where we'll find our answers to this question.
Yeah. Yeah. Because so often that can be a freezing space, right? Where you just, everything shuts down and stay in one place emotionally, mentally, and, sometimes for me, it's movement, getting up, moving around, going outside, doing something, right? It's not like that. You're right. What we're suggesting is not that you just sit and just wait for the answer to come, ruminate, or anything like that. It's to recognize that this is all a process and that a flow is going on. And we're discovering all the time. Like this debunking is an ongoing process. It's something that we learn over time, is to learn to move through it, and that it's okay that it happens that way. And you're right. When you notice things like, man, I have been really short-tempered lately. Listening to the body can tell you something. That last time that happened to me, I was like, I'm not getting enough sleep. That's exactly what's happening. I'm not getting enough sleep. I need to pull myself back, to an earlier time to go to bed, or I need to be getting up a little bit later, whatever it might be, or I need to take a nap. Those things matter. They aren't just these little side-asides like I used to think they were. Oh, I'm tired, I'll take a nap. Like that could be the main messaging that we're getting, not whatever our brains can come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to somebody just the other day, and the story was, I'm in a rut, all the different reasons why, what led up to the rut. I'm not going to be able to get out of the rut. All of this is not me, all of the things, and really what needed to happen was no daytime TV. So we took TV off the table in the daytime, and 2 weeks later, the world has opened up because when we limit ourselves in ways that aren't going to allow us to express who we really are or engage in things that really matter to us, we're going to be all in those stories of limitations and rutting and all of the things, just because the TV was on during the day. So we
Yeah.
take that out. We take that out, and it's a world of difference. So it can be really small things.
Yeah, it can be. I had a client recently, really something similar. What we needed to do, or what they realized they needed to do, was move their home workspace from where they were in their room, tucked away from everything, and move it out into a more well-lit, brighter, open area where they could open the windows and open the doors, hear some sounds of outside, feel a breeze. I mean, and it made a huge difference for them. You know, yeah,
Absolutely.
not rocket science.
No, but yeah, not taking all of the different elements for granted, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
even walking in the grass without your shoes on, or dipping your toes into some fresh water somewhere. We've got
Hmm.
yeah. So even those kinds of things can make big differences as we practice those over time. They just reconnect us,
Hmm.
right? Mhm.
Yeah, I find the things that reconnect me with my senses, in myself, go a long way. Sometimes like just washing my face, cold water, washing my face can be a nice thing to bring me right back, right? Or sometimes even just rubbing my hands together like I am right now, right? Just kind of, and then focusing on that feel. It can be super easy. I love walking in the grass without my shoes on. That is the
Mhm.
best.
Mhm.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Sort of
now the
like
weather's better. I could do it a little more often.
totally. I like to think about it like you're plugging yourself in, and getting a recharge.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I one of my favorite things when I think about the things that really relax me and connect me is when I go to the beach and I just walk, pull my jeans up, roll them up, and just walk in the surf. Just ankle deep. It's one of the best things. That reconnecting feeling
Mhm.
is great. Or the deep breath, at the top of a mountain on a hike. That deep breath of that mountain air can do the same thing.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So getting those are ways to get into the body. Those are moments in time that take us out of our headspace, even if it's just for a second. Um,
Hmm.
and then allow us to sort of clear some space for us to be able to sort out, what do we really enjoy? What parts of ourselves do we really love to express? And what are the stories that are keeping or kind of like complicating that?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it opens up the us to the experience that we all can have sometimes when whatever it is that you need to know arrives. When, from that space, being in the body, that happens more often over time where you just kind of know. And everybody struggles to put a label on it, right? Intuition or, whatever. I don't think that matters so much to me as just kind of, yep, okay. Yeah. It could be something as simple as, you know what? I don't even need to worry about that right now. And it could be
Mhm.
around something that once upon a time would wrap me around the axle at any given moment. The very fact that I'm like, no, I don't need to pay attention to that right now has ripple effects from that moment on. And it changes the game over time because if I can do that once and realize that once and know it once, I know now what that feeling is like and I don't have to hold on to it so tightly. That's liberation. That's moving towards freedom and ease, which is the whole
Mhm.
point of what we're doing here.
Yeah, and that's the part that listening to ourselves, right? Being able to say, you know what? I don't need to fix that right now. I don't need to worry about that right now. There's a possibility that this whole thing just kind of works itself out. Let's see.
Yep,
I wonder.
yep, yep. And I'm okay however it works out. I can learn to trust that I can handle what comes at me. That if something goes the way I don't want it to go or, that I'll be able to handle that. I think that can trip us up too. Is this like, we get so caught up in this. I don't want to feel pain over this or be caught by surprise by this or have difficulty with this. So I'm going to spend a lot of time up there. That listening to yourself leading to trusting yourself, right? Trusting, I'm designed to withstand this. I can make it through.
Yeah, that's the part too. I think that's a great example of a story. Like when you are trapped into, I can't handle this, that's a clear sign that there may be some conditioning issues there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some deeply embedded, narrative story, or an experience, something from an experience that, yeah, certainly. Tell you
Yeah,
what, though, it
because
feels good when you get those moments to just let go of a little bit of it, teases the possibility of doing so more.
Yeah, just lightening our load as we go. Yeah, just kind of lightening our load moment to moment. Again, that's the other thing. We want to go from this, like, flip the switch we've talked about before. That doesn't exist in this at all. So getting comfortable with this idea or accepting this idea that it's just a lightening little by little by little by little. Some moments it's going to be a big, huge one. And then other moments it's just going to be little by little.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, you'll notice sometimes like I do that, when something feels lighter, there's the stories in my head can tell me to pick up something else and make things heavy again. And I don't need to do that.
Nope.
Oh, there's much. Yeah. So, well,
Yeah.
All right. Well, now listening to ourselves, trusting ourselves, good stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah. Again, practice, and contrary to what people say on this, I don't think practice makes perfect. Practice just means practice and keeps getting better, improvement.
Yeah. It becomes more familiar with practice.
Exactly. And we'll leave you on that note. It becomes more familiar with practice. And that's really where the ease comes from. So thanks, Tawny. Really appreciate all that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And thank you to all of you for listening to this episode of Breaking Up with Our BS. Tawny and I will be back next week with another topic of something to debunk, something to talk about, because there's always more. So we hope you'll join us then. So until next week, I am JDK Winnikin.
And I am Tawny Santabria.
And we will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm